Breaking news coming straight out of Zimbabwe, and trust us, you do not want to miss this one. In a stunning twist that no one saw coming, sources close to the Zimbabwe Defense Forces have revealed an unbelievable offer made to Nelson Chamisa by top generals from the historic and powerful KG6 Army headquarters. Yes, you heard that right, KG6 itself. This could be the biggest political game-changer of the year, if not the decade. Now, before we get into the juicy details, take a moment and hit that subscribe button.
You know, just when you think you've got a handle on things, the political landscape can just completely shift. And Zimbabwe, well, it really feels like one of those moments right now.
Absolutely. Things seem to be moving very quickly.
So today, we're diving straight into some, frankly, pretty unexpected news, some quite startling claims that have popped up recently, mostly from a few specific YouTube sources.
That's right. We've been looking closely at videos from channels like Zimbabwe Unfiltered, also Honafini Global News TV, and the views put forward by Blessed Geza.
Yeah, and it gives this, well, fascinating picture. Complex, definitely. Lots of information swirling around these fast-moving events.
It is complex, and our goal here, our sort of mission for this deep dive is to take these different accounts, these analyses, and really try to, break them down.
Exactly. We want to figure out who the key players are in all this, understand what these rapid developments might actually mean for Zimbabwe's future.
And try to cut through some of the noise, right? Get to the core insights. It's a bit like trying to follow a major plot twist happening in real time.
It really is. And we should probably say up front, it's complicated territory.
Definitely. We need to recognize that different sources, well, they might present things through their own particular lens. So our aim is really to synthesize what we're hearing across these platforms.
And offer, hopefully, a balanced overview of the main claims and, what they could potentially signify.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's jump right in with what feels like, well, a potentially huge development, this alleged approach from senior generals at KG6.
Right, the main Army HQ.
Directly to Nelson Chamisa. I mean, that's a massive shift, isn't it, if it's true? Something many wouldn't have predicted.
No, indeed. The claim, and this is coming from sources cited by Zimbabwe Unfiltered, is that a group of generals, some still serving, some retired from this, really key military institute.
The generals are reportedly promising Chamisa a clear runway to the State House, but with a catch: there must be guarantees that the Army's interests, pensions, and national security role are protected during the transition. That's a major shift from the hardline stance we've seen in the past, and it could open the door to a peaceful democratic breakthrough. Now, will Chamisa accept this offer? That's the million-dollar question. On one hand, this could be the opportunity he's been waiting for. The power and influence of the military cannot be...
have reportedly offered Chamisa some kind of backing.
And it's not just talk, apparently. It's presented as a direct communication from within the military establishment itself.
Which is quite something. And the reasons being floated are just as significant.
Yeah, tell us about those.
Well, these generals have apparently acknowledged what they perceive as a really widespread desire among ordinary Zimbabweans for change.
Okay.
There's reportedly growing frustration even, within some military circles about the economy, the hardship, and just this general sense of political stagnation.
That frustration within the military, that feels particularly noteworthy. What's the significance there?
Well, it hints at a potential divergence, doesn't it? A shift away from that long-standing sort of alignment between the military top brass and ZANU-PF.
Right.
Sources are suggesting perhaps, maybe a younger generation of officers, even veterans, are feeling the economic pinch themselves and are maybe considering, other political options.
And historically, the military stance has always been such a critical factor in Zimbabwe.
Absolutely key. So any perceived shift, however slight, is definitely worth paying close attention to.
But this reported offer, it's not a blank check, is it? There are conditions attached.
No, definitely not. The generals are supposedly quite clear, outlining requirements for what they call a peaceful national transition framework.
Such as?
Well, key among them are guarantees. Assurances that the military's own institutional interests, things like their pensions, their future role in national security, all that would be protected under any new setup.
Okay, so it's pragmatic.
Very pragmatic. It really underlines the practical side of things. Even if some elements are thinking about change, their own future, and national stability from their viewpoint, That remains paramount.
So they're not just offering support, they're seeking guarantees about their own relevance, their security in a potential post-Mnangagwa Zimbabwe.
Exactly. It raises that fundamental point about how power transitions often involve these complex negotiations over the role of established institutions, doesn't it?
It does. So, okay, on one side, this could be a huge opportunity for Chamisa. A smoother path to power, maybe, given the military's historical influence.
Potentially, yes.
But, as Zimbabwe Unfiltered also notes, there's a flip side, a potential downside.
Which is?
Forming an alliance, even a tentative one, with parts of the very establishment accused of suppressing his movement. Well, that could alienate some of his core base, couldn't it? People looking for a complete break.
That's the tightrope walk, isn't it? It highlights the incredibly delicate balance Chamisa would have to strike.
Yeah.
Accepting an offer like this, if it's real, would be a massive gamble. He'd have to weigh the potential for actually gaining power against that.
His Excellency President Emmerson Mnangagwa has touched down at the Joshua Nkobuko Komu International Airport in Bulawayo, ahead of one of Zimbabwe's biggest business events, the 65th edition of the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair, ZANU-PF. The grand official opening is set for Thursday, April 25th, with President Mnangagwa joined by a special guest of honor, President Chopo. All eyes are on Bulawayo, and yes, the ZANU-PF fever has truly gripped the city. But wait, things took an unexpected twist at the airport that has Zimbabweans talking. In a surprising and very noticeable turn of
risk of perhaps disillusioning the grassroots support that's been so vital.
It's that classic political tension, really. Practical gains versus sticking to core principles.
Precisely. And the big question just hanging there is, will he accept or has he already responded? We don't know yet.
I don't know. It's a decision that could fundamentally redraw the country's political map.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
His choice involves a very careful calculation, you'd imagine. Assessing the upsides, the downsides, the risks for him, his movement, and, the broader picture for Zimbabwe's democracy.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about that very public scene at Bulawayo Airport. President Mnangagwa arriving for the ZANU-PF, the trade fair,
right,
and the absence of both Vice Presidents Chiwenga and Mahadi from the official welcoming party. That's definitely raised eyebrows.
It certainly has. And what makes it particularly interesting is the context. According to Zimbabwe Unfiltered, both VPs were apparently in Bulawayo at the time.
Oh, really? So not a scheduling clash?
Doesn't seem like it. Their absence from such a high-profile, formal event strongly suggests it wasn't accidental. It implies a deliberate message.
Wow, a deliberate message played out right there in front of the cameras, international guests. That's a pretty bold statement, isn't it?
It is. And sources within ZANU-PF itself have apparently hinted it wasn't just an oversight, suggesting it was, intentional.
So what could be the thinking behind such a public snub?
Well, it fuels all the speculation about potentially serious underlying disagreements, maybe even power struggles right at the top of ZANU-PF.
Cracks in the facade.
Could be. It might be interpreted as a sign of significant internal tension, perhaps undermining that image of a completely unified leadership. In politics, often who shows up where or who doesn't show up can be a very powerful signal.
Yet, despite all this apparent drama swirling around him, President Mnangagwa seemed, quite composed.
Yes, he focused on his schedule, addressed the media, talked up the importance of the ZANU-PF for innovation and trade.
Almost like trying to project business as usual despite the obvious undertones.
That's a standard political playbook, isn't it? Project control, project unity, even when facing internal turbulence.
True. But the questions don't go away.
No. Will the vice presidents turn up for the official opening of the ZANU-PF? That's one question. And more fundamentally, what was the real message behind their initial absence? It suggests, at the very least, a significant level of discomfort, maybe even outright opposition.
Okay, now let's turn to Blessed Geza. He's making some very assertive claims, very strong statements.
Yes, quite forceful. He's been quite vocal, stating flatly that Mnangagwa is going, basically, whether he likes it or not.
And that there's a, quote, progressive force actively working to remove him.
That's the claim. His narrative paints this picture of imminent change, forces actively pushing for Mnangagwa's departure.
And he also mentioned the national shutdown he called for previously.
He maintains it's still ongoing, even if maybe less visible now. He suggests civil servants are being pressured not to participate openly, but that the sentiment is still there. Raises questions about the real level of public dissent, I suppose.
And Geza really doesn't mince words when it comes to corruption allegations, does he?
No, not at all. He's made extremely serious accusations against the businessman Kuda Taguire, accusing him of grand looting, defrauding the state.
He specifically names Secunda, the energy company, suggests it was built on ill-gotten gains.
Yes, and what's notable is the level of detail in Geza's allegations. He claims Taguire improperly got shares in a company called Kuma, profited from assets allegedly taken from state entities.
Which assets?
He names GDI, which he says came from the army, and Sandana, reportedly from the Zimbabwe Finance Development Corporation, ZFDC, and also involving a UK company.
And he alleges financial manipulation, too.
He claims CBZ capital was used to inflate the value of these assets fictitiously before they were sold back to the state. These are very specific, complex financial claims.
Claims that would need serious investigation to verify, obviously.
Absolutely. But the detail is striking, and according to Geza, this progressive force he talks about is demanding the recovery of these allegedly stolen funds and assets.
He even specifies percentages, right? Like 50% of GDI back to the Defense Forces, 100% of Sandana to the Mining Development Corporation.
Yes, that level of detail suggests a very specific agenda. It seems focused on addressing what they see as major economic injustices, maybe restructuring ownership of key national assets.
And he gives a reason for the delay in this removal.
He claims the delay in action is deliberate, aimed at minimizing potential casualties during the transition, which suggests a calculated approach, perhaps anticipating resistance but wanting a controlled outcome.
So the vision goes beyond just removing Mnangagwa. Geza talks about a transitional authority afterward.
That's right. He claims that post-Mnangagwa, a transitional body will be set up. The aims: stabilize the country, restore constitutional rule, build stronger institutions.
Which implies a move away from ZANU-PF dominance, at least temporarily.
It certainly points towards that, yes. The whole concept of a transitional government suggests a major power shift, needing a period of stabilization and reform to avoid, further instability.
And then there's the health claim, perhaps the most concerning personally. Geza alleges President Mnangagwa is suffering from vascular dementia.
Yes, and he suggests this makes the president vulnerable, susceptible to manipulation by those around him.
That's a very serious allegation about capacity to govern.
It is. If true, it would raise fundamental questions. But, and this is crucial, it's a major health claim made by an opponent. It absolutely requires independent verification before being taken as fact. We have to treat it with caution.
Understood. Okay, now let's connect this to the reports about military movements, specifically linked to Vice President Chiwenga.
Right. Zimbabwe Unfiltered has been reporting on this too. Allegations that Chiwenga has taken control of key army barracks across the country.
How? What does taking control mean here?
Well, the reports suggest elite forces have been redeployed, repositioned, and that certain commanders, perhaps those seen as loyal to Mnangagwa, have been effectively sidelined or become inactive.
That sounds like a potential power play within the military itself and a direct challenge.
If these reports are accurate, yes, it would certainly suggest a direct challenge to President Mnangagwa's authority as commander-in-chief.
And it would indicate a serious internal power struggle playing out within the security forces, given Chiwenga's own deep military background.
Exactly. It wouldn't be entirely out of character if tensions are genuinely that high between the president and vice president.
And adding fuel to this fire is that reported leaked audio recording.
Yes, the audio where a voice said to resemble Mnangagwa's is supposedly discussing a strategy, a plan to neutralize elements within the War Veterans Association.
Neutralize. Strong word. Why target the war vets, though? They've historically been a core ZANU-PF constituency.
Well, the alleged motivation, according to the sources cited by Zimbabwe Unfiltered, is their growing criticism. They've apparently become more vocal about corruption, the economy.
Okay.
And there's concern they might be aligning with some kind of new political movement, potentially challenging ZANU-PF from within its traditional base. So they might be seen as a growing threat to Mnangagwa's grip on power.
And Chiwenga's alleged reaction to this leaked audio, how does he reportedly respond?
Fury, apparently, leading directly to him asserting control over military infrastructure as a countermove.
Wow, so it really paints a picture of a direct confrontation, possibly brewing or even happening, between the president and his VP being fought out, essentially, within the military structure.
It certainly looks that way based on these reports. Chiwenga, with his history and influence in the armed forces would likely see any move against the war vets as highly provocative.
And then there are these other reports, maybe less confirmed, but still circulating, unusual ground activity.
Yeah, talk of military truck movements, troop deployments maybe in key cities like Harar, Bulawayo, Masvingo, anecdotal accounts of an increased military presence.
How seriously should we take those kinds of reports? They can be hard to verify.
True, verification is key. But such reported movements, if widespread, often add weight to claims of internal military shifts or heightened alert status. They're rarely just routine.
It suggests preparations for something, or maybe just a show of force by one side or the other.
Could be either or both. But it brings us back to that central question, doesn't it? Who is actually in control right now? The lines of authority seem very, very blurred and contested.
So, given all these alleged movements, this internal maneuvering, who does the military actually support in all this? Does anyone have the upper hand?
Well, Holophony Global News TV offered some analysis on this. They suggest
because definitely these individuals have reinforced their security, and what they are using are the state coffers to do so. So they want to make sure that either it is direct confrontation, either it is the enforcement of the arrest of these individuals. The enforcement of the arrest is done with minimal casualties on the people of Zimbabwe. I think this is the point that has been underscored even by Knox Chivero, saying a good military personnel is the one that ensures that when he goes to a battle, he make fewer losses or no losses at all. So this is what Blessed Geza underscored as a reason why we have seen delayed action.
Chiwenga currently holds more sway, more influence within the military ranks.
And what's their reasoning for that assessment?
Several things. Firstly, the kind of platform and maybe even equipment Blessed Geza seems to have access to could hint at backing from somewhere within the security establishment.
Okay.
Also, things like the use of military-style songs in some of Geza's broadcasts. And fundamentally, Chiwenga's own long, deep history and established network within the military structures. He's a known quantity there.
They also floated a rather sobering argument, didn't they, about potential transitions?
Yes, the idea that if a leadership change were to happen, one perhaps guided by experienced military figures like Chiwenga who know how these things work internally, well, it might unfortunately result in less widespread violence or chaos.
That's a grim calculation, but perhaps a pragmatic one based on past events.
It reflects a certain realpolitik view, based on historical patterns maybe. The idea that those with command structures might manage a shift more tightly, though it's certainly no guarantee, and carries huge risks itself.
Okay, one last major point. There's speculation, again from Holophony Global News TV, that President Mnangagwa might try to use the upcoming burials of national heroes.
Right, the director of the CIO.
Greetings and welcome on your lovely channel, Holophony Global News. If you're watching us for the very first time, please do remember to press the red or black subscribe button so that next time when we beam live, you become the very first one to watch us. So today is one of the days where dramatic political events are definitely going to be experienced at the Zimbabwe National Heroes Acre as ZANU-PF buries yet again two individuals within the security cluster of Zimbabwe. A scary development that has been ongoing since 2017 at alarming levels and at alarming heights. Now, what to expect today at the Zimbabwe National Heroes Acre? Definitely Emmerson Mnangagwa, as it has been the norm during ZANU-PF public events, he would be advancing factional agenda. We will see a lot of 2030, most probably those young women for ET led by the
Air Marshal, recent deaths.
That he might use these solemn occasions to push his own political, maybe factional agenda. How would that work?
Well, in many political systems, big national events, especially state funerals for prominent figures, are often strategically used. They can be platforms to project unity, strength, control, even when things are shaky.
So Mnangagwa's presence, the speeches given, the overall messaging, it could all be designed to bolster his position. Project leadership amidst all this uncertainty.
Precisely. It's about controlling the narrative, using the symbols of the state to reinforce legitimacy.
But it creates such a stark contrast, doesn't it? These displays of official ceremony, national unity, set against what seems to be growing public weariness. The economic hardship that's just grinding people down in their daily lives.
That's a critical point. There often seems to be this huge gap between the official pronouncements and the lived reality for so many Zimbabweans.
Yeah.
Persistent economic struggles, poor services that fuels genuine discontent, a desire for change, regardless of the high-level political games being played out. It underscores why you need to look at both things, the formal politics and the underlying social and economic reality.
So let's try and pull these threads together. We're seeing this incredibly tangled web, aren't we? Interconnected events.
Definitely interconnected.
We've got the alleged military offer to the opposition leader, Chamisa, then the very public snub of the VPs at the airport.
Right. Followed by Blethedgeza's really strong claims, imminent removal, massive corruption allegations.
And clear signals of potential serious power plays within the military itself, possibly involving Chiwenga directly challenging Mnangagwa's authority.
Exactly. The whole situation feels highly dynamic, incredibly fluid, and just marked by profound uncertainty right now. These don't feel like isolated incidents.
No, they seem like pieces of a much larger puzzle that's still being assembled, or maybe disassembled.
Could be either. And the implications, obviously, for Zimbabwe's political future and just for the lives of ordinary people are huge. We could be watching a really significant period of transition unfold.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a big question to mull over, doesn't it?
It does. Considering all these deep-seated issues we've touched on, the complex power dynamics clearly at play. What kind of future for Zimbabwe do these events even suggest is possible?
And what roles might all the different actors play in shaping whatever comes next? The military factions, the opposition, ZANU-PF itself, maybe even regional neighbors or international players.
Lots to think about. It's a situation that demands close watching, for sure.
Absolutely. It's a lot to take in, and the story is clearly far from over. We really encourage you to keep following these developments closely and, always try to critically assess the information coming from various sources. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.